Hey, what's going on, guys? So today I figured that I made myself some wine just recently, and this has turned out pretty good. But I'm actually starting myself on another project to make what I think is going to be my best wine yet. Tune in. So I've previously made wine before, which you can see in this bottle right here, which all I used for this is just some grapes, some brown sugar, and then I also put a little bit of apple in here too, but barely enough to really make a difference. But there were some things that I noticed with this. Well, as you can tell, it's a little bit cloudy, and apparently, at least from what I've seen before, people have said that actually adding anything with acidity. So I grabbed some limes here. So my plan is that this next batch of wine that I want to make, I'm going to actually do it a little bit differently. I'm going to add some sugar content. So this time I'm going to actually use some honey and probably some sugar too. But since it's a honey that I'm going to be using, technically that changes the name of the wine to a melmel. Mullamel. I don't know how to properly say that. But yeah, so all that I'm going to be using today are, of course, some grapes, some limes to hopefully clear up the wine once it's done, make it a little bit less cloudy. I'm going to use some honey. I'm going to use some brown sugar as well, and then any kind of really yeast helps. So I have some instant yeast here, which is pretty much or mostly just used for bread making. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to fit all the ingredients inside this bottle. And how I plan on doing that is just with this. I'm going to be cutting everything up. And I'm actually thinking of smashing some of the juices to actually break up the fruit a little bit. And then the juice I'm going to pour in here, and then I'm also going to put the skins in here as well. Now the reason why I'll put the skins in here is it actually adds to the flavor. The yeast actually breaks apart the skin of the grapes and that little bit of apple that I'm going to include in here as well. A lot of this information that I got about making wine actually comes from DIY fermentation. So if you want more detail into the reason why I'm doing it this way, it would be better to actually check out his channel to see how he does it, because that's a lot of where the inspiration comes from for me making this wine. Now, as I said before, I have made my own wine, and you can see it right here. And this wine, it's got a little bit of a brown color, but it was actually very pink. The reason why it actually started to change color, I believe, is actually the same reason why apples begin to turn brown after being exposed to oxygen. It hasn't affected the taste of the wine in my experience, but yeah, I guess you always want to keep it corked. And the reason why it did get air, why it got some oxygen, was because I left it in this bottle with the lid semi-on for a little bit too long to where it stops fermenting, and then oxygen is able to flow into it. So, yeah, anyway, it does not affect the taste of it at all, but yeah, it's just something to watch out for if you want to keep its nice pristine color. You may also be asking why I'm deciding to use honey and sugar in my, I guess, wine making recipe. The reason why I want to use honey is actually because it is much more soluble in water than natural brown sugar is. And the last time that I made wine, I put my sugar in here and I mixed it up and I did all that. It just took me so much longer to do, and I don't have as much time today. So basically, that's why I'm using the wine. That's why I'm using the honey. Now, it might affect the taste, but I'm curious to see what that's like. But yeah, without further ado, I guess let's start chopping up some grapes. Now there is quite a bit of grape juice starting to form down here. Now what I've seen him do on DIY fermentation is actually, he will actually take this juice and then add the yeast to it to actually start the reaction. Yeah, I'm sure that's a great way to do it too. At least when I've done it, I just added it directly to the bottle, mixed it up, and then waited for it to start to bubble to actually show that the reaction is happening. And then that's how I know that it's working. Now, so either way, I'm sure it works, and he's more of an expert at it than I am, but at least in my experience, I like to just add the yeast directly to the bottle and mix it, because I don't know, I feel like the yeast will activate just fine. Okay, so I just finished adding all my grapes. What I think I'm going to add next is some lime. And again, from what I see on DIY fermentation, is that he actually adds the lime because it's supposed to deal with some of the cloudiness that happens in the wine. I don't think cloudiness is that big of a deal. It doesn't seem to affect the taste at all, but I'm just curious to see why he does it and why I should be doing it. So might as well, if he says I should do it, then I'm going to do it. Chop this in half. Next bit I'll add, or the bit that I should have added already, is the bits of apple. Okay, I think that's all the apple that I want to add for now. Means I get to eat this piece. Alright, what I think I'm going to start doing now is actually adding sugar. Now, one thing that kind of surprised me about watching DIY fermentation is that he adds a lot of sugar. I added a lot of sugar, I thought, last time, but dang, he adds a lot more sugar than I do. So, partly why I got the honey. Now, with the honey, yeah, it's just a lot more water soluble, so it just makes it easier for me. That's pretty much the only reason why. Oh, I don't want to lose it. Oh, this honey is really runny. Now I've actually decided I'm going to for one, get the honey a bit more dissolved that's left in this bottle, and two, I'm going to actually activate the yeast. I thought about not activating the yeast because I didn't need to do it last time, but I figure since I've got some of this honey left in this bottle right here, that I might as well do it. Actually, let's do it this way. Think smarter, not harder. Now I should mention, I mean, I've heard that you could really add tap water or just regular drinking water. From what I'm using here is actually just drinking water. just because, well, I mean, I don't want to try tap water necessarily. Now to start off this yeast or to activate it, I'm only going to use a tiny bit. This is the little capsule that came in this lid right here. I feel like that's a good measurement to start with. Okay. Put it in here, officially activate it. Ooh, that already smells good. Now, let the yeast all mixed up in there. And then I'm just going to I'm going to close the bottle. And hopefully what we should see when the yeast is activated, actually this bottle should expand outward. So I'm actually going to try that. And while doing that, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing here with these lines. Alright, actually my phone ran out of storage. So what I was saying is that you might notice that there's a lot of fruit in here. And yeah, I do think it is a lot of fruit, but also at the same time, I think the more fruit you add, actually the more it adds to the flavor. You can just get all the juices from this, maybe you make a blender of some sort and then filter that out, just get the juices, but at least in my experience the taste is not the same. I tried making my own mead before, and in the process of doing that, yeah, I tried to just get the juices from the apples, and honestly, it did not taste anywhere as good. So, yeah, honestly, I think adding and leaving the fruit in there is your best option. Alright, one thing I noticed is some bubbles are starting to form. I don't know how well you can see that. That means our yeast is pretty much activated. So I'm eating an apple. A part of an apple. Going to add my squeezed lime juice. And then now I'm going to add the yeast. Something happening there. So let's just hope for the best. Our hopefully activated yeast now. I think I'm going to top it off with a little bit more sugar. There's already a lot of sugar in there. I don't know, I'm going to add water. So more drinking water right here. Now I'm leaving a little bit of space at the top here so that I can actually squeeze the bottle just like this. I'll actually show you here in a second. I left a little bit of room at the top for one reason, and that is so that I can screw on the top. The idea is you want the carbon dioxide to stay in here, but of course you don't want to create like an alcohol bomb, right? So, excuse me. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to squeeze it and then just turn it. And then ideally you should hear like an air escape. Hold on. As soon as you hear that? That's perfect. What I like to do is I like to squeeze it and see, that's perfect. See, if I squeeze it anymore, air will escape, but then as soon as I let it go, it's now at a vacuum. That's perfect. Now, basically, the idea is just let it sit and wait. Alright, one thing I just noticed after, partially cleaning up, is you see all these bubbles right here? That is a great sign. That means it's already fermenting. The yeast is already starting to break down to make alcohol. And I do notice occasionally you'll see a couple bubbles pop up. Let me see if I can find any. Yeah, you can see a bubble or two up there, but yeah, I'll give you an update when this is really starting to go off. So here we are the next morning, and you can see it is bubbling a lot now. That means it is properly fermenting, and that is awesome. Now when it comes to keeping the wine, one thing that I noticed is, at least I've seen a couple of people try to keep the pressure locked in like this, which I would say that's kind of scary to do. So the problem is that if you keep it locked up like this, you could potentially have a wine bomb, or at least a fermenting bomb. So at least when it gets to this stage, when it's creating a ton of bubbles, what I like to do, well, what anyone should do, I think, is just keep twisting the lid ever so slightly, and you should hear some gas escape. Now the idea is, there we go. The reason why you do this is, of course, so that you don't make a fermenting bomb, and also it ensures that there's no oxygen getting into the bottle, which inside the bottle is actually an anaerobic reaction happening with the yeast breaking down the fruit inside here. And anaerobic just means without oxygen. And that is important because that is the only way that you produce alcohol. So you want to make sure that there's no oxygen or air in general getting in here, but still escaping out. Second fermentation part, which is basically after it's done in this stage, it will bubble a lot less, so you don't get these little rising bubbles anymore. That means it's done with the initial fermentation. That means that it's breaking apart everything right now. It's breaking down the grapes and breaking down the sugar to create the carbon dioxide and alcohol. But once it is done doing this initially, that is when you actually filter it out and then put the wine into a bottle more like this. But that is when the second fermentation will happen. So I actually just keep it inside the same bottle, just filter it out, put the alcohol or put the wine back in, and then do the same exact thing. Bring up the lid set just right. That way you don't create yourself a bomb. But that way a second fermentation can actually happen. The second fermentation really just, that's when I notice most of the alcohol actually develops. Like right now, the yeast is breaking down the fruit and the sugar inside here, and so that is why you see most of the bubbles are actually coming up from the fruit itself, because that's where it's breaking down the sugar and inside the skin of the fruit. But during the second fermentation, that's when it breaks down all of the sugar that is left, and then you let it sit. The yeast will actually eventually, or at least the alcohol inside the bottle will become so strong that it actually ends up killing the yeast. And that is important because when you have wine, of course, you don't want to be drinking a lot of yeast with it. That can actually cause a lot of stomach issues. But yeah, this has sat out for quite a long time, and I filtered it again so that to ensure that there's no more yeast and stuff happening inside here, and then voila, you've got yourself some wine. Other than talking about the lid, when it comes to actually storing this in this stage, yeah, just anywhere warm but dark. At least sunlight will actually, the UV will actually kill the yeast inside here, which you don't want. So that's why I like to keep it in somewhere dark and cool. You could just keep it on like a countertop, but at least to me this doesn't look too entirely sightly. So that's why I like to keep it at least underneath my kitchen. Alright, so here you can see my cupboard. All I like to do is just keep it inside the cupboard just because it's cold or it's dark it doesn't get a lot of light. Alright, I was just checking the wine. Alright, I was just checking out the wine, and that's when I noticed that the fermentation is just about done. And you can tell that by, for one, it will have pressure, but you won't see much of the bubbles appearing up anymore. We don't see a lot of these bubbles coming up anymore. And that's how I can tell that the fermentation has stopped. I'm going to filter this out with this strainer right here. And so how I'm going to do that is with the fruit in here, I'm going to try to get rid of it. But then only have the juices left to put back in the bottle. And I think I'm going to squish the grapes a little bit more too. That way we can just fill this bottle with juice now. So I'm going to be basically pouring the juice into here, and if this gets full, then I'll just pour it in here. But ideally, I'm going to be putting the wine back inside this bottle. Went ahead and grabbed my funnel.
One thing you will notice while you are doing this is that a lot of the fruit now looks a little bit deflated, like a deflated balloon. Because yeah, the yeast went in there and actually ripped apart the fruit and also broke the sugar down into alcohol.
As you can tell, I ended up with a little bit more than I thought I was going to. So I'm going to go wash this bottle out real quick, make sure that there's none of the pulp left. Then I'm going to filter it one more time back into here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this filter one more time into this funnel, therefore into the bottle. As you can see, this is the final result. Now it's cloudy still because it's still got some of the yeast and some of the, I guess, whatever's left from the juices or from the fruits. But yeah, ideally this should settle out within a couple weeks or so. And then yeah, once you get the collection at the bottom, after maybe about a month or so, I'll put this in its bottle. Now, in terms of storing, what I would normally do is exactly what I did previously, is just turning the lid a slight bit and then giving it a slight vacuum so that I know that air was only going to be leaving out but not coming in. But I decided to change it up a little bit. I think I'm going to put a balloon at the end of it just to see how much it really inflates, because I don't know if it creates that much gas at this point. I don't know. I'm curious. Now, as you can see, I've got the balloon on here. Now, we just let it sit for about another month. In terms of storing, I'm going to set it up here. I don't think I need to keep it inside of a dark place anymore, but I feel like this is a dark place enough. So yeah, just going to keep it right up there.
As you can see here, this is about, let's say, 3 weeks after that I put it up on top of my cupboard. You can see most of the yeast has settled out to the bottom, and it is still a little bit cloudy, so I'm going to give it a little bit longer.
Alrighty, as you can see here, it looks like all the yeast has settled down to the bottom and that it's relatively clear now. So I'm going to filter it again one more time just to get the yeast out of here, and then you're going to actually see me try it tonight. Alright, as you can see here, it looks like all of the yeast has settled down to the bottom, and you can see it is pretty clear. So what I'm going to do is right now I'm going to filter it one more time just to get the yeast out of the bottom of this, and then you're going to see me try this later on tonight. And I figure I better show this right before I actually filter it out. Look, actually not much carbon dioxide was formed while during the second fermentation, which is pretty interesting. I thought there would be more, but I guess not very much. Alrighty, so I've got my freshly made bottle of wine right here, and I've got myself a wine glass. Let's test it out. Okay. Let's not go too crazy. But smell, it's kind of nice. It's got kind of a unique smell. I've never smelled wine like this before. Let's try it out. Cheers. So I think at least adding the lime juice, maybe I added a bit too much lime juice. But overall, I don't think that's not bad. It's definitely drinkable. I would add a little bit less lime juice, just because it does make it pretty acidic. But other than that, I feel like the taste is pretty good. I feel like adding all the sugar that I did this time made for a stronger tasting wine, a stronger alcohol content. But yeah, it's pretty soothing to the tongue, so I really like it. I'm pretty happy with the result. Alright, well, I hope you guys got something out of today's video. I appreciate you watching. Hope to see you next time. Peace out. Now, of course, I should leave with a disclaimer. Of course, this video is for mature audiences only. If you're able to drink, if you're of age to drink, wherever you may be, this video's for you. And if so, cheers. Hope to see you in the next one, and tell me how your wine goes. Peace.